The eviction notice felt heavier than paper should feel. Elena Rossi stared at the bold letters. Final notice. 7 days to vacate, while her younger brother's breathing machine hummed its steady rhythm from the bedroom down the hall. 72 hours, until the electricity would be shut off. 7 days, until they'd be on the street. And Marco's medical equipment required constant power, or he'd die. 26 years old, and Elena had already buried her parents. A drunk driver 3 years ago. Instant, merciful in its speed if not its cruelty. She'd become Marco's guardian at 23, dropped out of her teaching program at NYU, and spent the last 3 years working every job she could find to keep him alive. But juvenile muscular dystrophy was expensive. The kind of expensive that swallowed paychecks whole and left nothing but medical debt and desperation in its wake. The job posting had appeared like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. Live-in nanny needed immediately. $4,000 per week. Discretion required. 4 hours later, Elena sat across from Dante Caruso in his Fifth Avenue penthouse office, signing a contract that would either save her brother's life or destroy her own. Dante Caruso looked exactly like the kind of man who could afford a penthouse overlooking Central Park. Tall, maybe 6'3", with dark hair and eyes that assessed her like she was a potential threat to be catalogued and neutralized. He wore a black suit tailored so perfectly it seemed weaponized, and when he spoke, his voice carried the quiet authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "My daughter is 6 years old," he said, no preamble, no warmth. "Her name is Gabriella. Her mother died 2 years ago. Since then, she's had 7 nannies. None lasted more than 4 months." "Why?" Elena asked, her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. "Because Gabriella is difficult. She doesn't speak to strangers. Has nightmares. Behavioral issues." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "The previous nannies found her too challenging. Or I fired them for lacking the patience a traumatized child requires." Elena thought of Marco, of how trauma lived in the body long after the mind tried to forget. "I understand difficult. My brother has a degenerative disease. I've spent 3 years learning that patience isn't optional when someone you love is suffering." Something flickered in Dante's expression. Not quite approval, but interest. "You'll live here. Your room adjoins Gabriella's. You're responsible for her from wake up to bedtime. I work long hours. My business requires." He paused, choosing words carefully. "Discretion. You don't ask questions about what I do. You don't discuss anything you see or hear in this household with anyone. Ever. Violation means immediate termination and legal consequences. Understood?" Translation: he was a criminal. Mafia, probably, given the Italian surname and the kind of money that bought penthouses and paid $4,000 weekly for childcare. Elena should have walked away, should have recognized danger when it wore an expensive suit and spoke in careful euphemisms. But Marco's breathing machine hummed in her memory, and the eviction notice sat in her purse, and $4,000 a week could save both their lives. "Understood," she said quietly. "You start tonight. If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you." Elena met Gabriella at school pickup that same afternoon. The little girl emerged from the building alone, her dark hair in 2 neat braids, her uniform dress hanging slightly too large on her thin frame. She walked with her eyes down, navigating through clusters of chattering children without looking at anyone. No one called out to her. No one waved goodbye. She simply walked to the edge of the pickup area and waited invisible. Elena's heart broke a little. "Hi, Gabriella," she said gently, crouching to eye level from a respectful distance. "My name is Elena. Your dad asked me to pick you up today." Gabriella's hazel eyes widened. She took a step back, her small hands tightening on her backpack straps. "It's okay. I'm not going to touch you or come closer. I know you don't know me yet. That must feel scary." Elena kept her voice soft, non-threatening. "We can call your dad if you want, so you know I'm telling the truth." Gabriella stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. They drove to the penthouse in silence. Gabriella chose the seat farthest from Elena, staring out the window the entire ride. When they arrived, she went directly to her room without acknowledging anyone, closing the door with quiet finality. Mrs. Chun, the household manager, showed Elena to her room. Miss Gabriella doesn't warm to people quickly. Don't take it personally. She's been through a great deal. The room was beautiful. Cream walls, a queen bed with soft gray linens, an ensuite bathroom with marble counters. A door connected to Gabriella's room, currently closed. Through the walls, Elena heard nothing. Just silence. Dinner is at 6, Mrs. Chun continued. Mr. Caruso dines with Gabriella when he's home. Tonight he has a business meeting, so you'll eat with her alone. She's particular about food. Plain pasta usually works. No red sauce. She doesn't like things that are too messy. After Mrs. Chun left, Elena unpacked her single suitcase. Everything she owned fit in one bag. At 6, she knocked softly on the connecting door. Gabriella, it's Elena. Dinner's ready. No response. Elena tried again. I know you don't know me yet. That's okay. But you need to eat something. I can bring dinner to your room if you prefer. Or you can come to the kitchen. Your choice. After a long moment, the door opened a crack. Gabriella peered out, assessing, then slipped past Elena without speaking and walked toward the kitchen. Progress. Dinner was awkward. Gabriella ate plain pasta in small, precise bites, her eyes fixed on her plate. Elena didn't try to force conversation. She just existed in the space, occasionally mentioning something neutral. This pasta is really good. Or, I like your butterfly hair clips, without expecting responses. After dinner, Gabriella returned to her room. Elena cleaned up, then knocked on the connecting door again. Gabriella, do you want help getting ready for bed? The door opened slightly. Gabriella stood there in princess pajamas, holding a toothbrush. She looked at Elena, then at the bathroom, then back at Elena. You want me to wait while you brush your teeth? Elena guessed. A nod. Elena sat on the edge of Gabriella's bed, a white canopy bed fit for royalty, covered in stuffed animals that looked pristine and untouched. The room was immaculate. Too immaculate. Like a display in a furniture store, rather than a space where a child actually lived. Gabriella emerged from the bathroom and climbed into bed without assistance. She pulled the covers up to her chin, her hazel eyes watching Elena warily. Would you like me to read you a story? Elena asked. Gabriella's gaze flicked to the bookshelf, then back to Elena. A tiny nod. Elena selected a picture book about a brave little rabbit. She sat in the chair beside the bed and read aloud, keeping her voice gentle and even. Gabriella listened without moving, her small body rigid under the covers. When the story ended, Elena closed the book. Good night, Gabriella. I'm right next door if you need anything. Just knock on the door, okay? I'm a light sleeper. I'll hear you. She turned off the main light, leaving a night light glowing near the closet, and returned to her own room. Through the wall, she heard nothing. Just silence. Elena changed into sleep clothes and climbed into the unfamiliar bed. Exhaustion pulled at her, but anxiety kept her alert. She'd just committed to living with a Mafia boss and his traumatized daughter. Had just left her brother in the care of their neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who'd agreed to check on Marco daily in exchange for Elena's first paycheck. Everything about the situation screamed danger. But the alternative was Marco dying because she couldn't afford to keep him alive. So Elena closed her eyes and tried to sleep, telling herself she'd made the right choice. She'd barely drifted off when she heard it. A soft sound, barely audible, coming from Gabriella's room. Elena sat up, listening. There it was again, a quiet shuffling, like fabric dragging across carpet. She slipped out of bed and moved to the connecting door, pressing her ear against it. More shuffling. Then silence. Elena knocked softly. Gabriella, are you okay? No response. She tried the handle. Unlocked. She opened the door slowly, peering into the darkened room. The bed was empty. Elena's heart jumped. She stepped inside, scanning the space. Gabriella! Nothing. Then she heard it, a small, shaky breath coming from near the floor. Elena dropped to her knees and looked under the bed. Gabriella lay curled on her side in the narrow space beneath the bed frame, her princess pajamas twisted around her small body, her eyes squeezed shut. Her hands pressed against her ears, and she was trembling. Oh, sweetheart, Elena whispered. She laid flat on the floor, bringing herself to Gabriella's level. "Gabriella, it's Elena. Can you hear me?" The little girl's eyes opened slowly. In the dim light from the hallway, they looked huge and terrified. "You're under the bed," Elena said gently. "Are you hiding from something?" Gabriella's hands remained pressed against her ears. She nodded almost imperceptibly. "What are you hiding from, honey?" Gabriella's lips moved, forming words so quiet Elena had to strain to hear them. "The fighting," she whispered. "When they fight, I hide. Mama said to hide when they fight." Elena's throat tightened. "Who's fighting, Gabriella?" "Mama and the bad men. They were so loud. She said hide, baby, hide until it's quiet. Don't come out till it's quiet." Tears slipped down Gabriella's cheeks. "But it got quiet, and she didn't come get me. She didn't come get me, and there was so much red on the floor." Understanding crashed over Elena like ice water. Gabriella hadn't just lost her mother to cancer, as Dante had claimed. She'd witnessed something violent, something that had taught a 4-year-old child that hiding under the bed was the only way to survive. "Gabriella," Elena kept her voice steady despite the horror flooding through her. "Your mama was very smart to tell you to hide. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. But she died. The bad men hurt her and she died, and I was hiding." Gabriella's small body shook with sobs. "I should have helped her. I should have been brave." "No, baby. No." Elena's own tears were falling now. "You were 4 years old. You couldn't have stopped them. Your mama told you to hide because she was protecting you. The bravest thing you could have done was exactly what you did. You listened to her. You stayed safe. That's what she wanted. But she's gone. I know. I know she is, and that's not fair. It's not fair at all." They lay there on the floor, Elena outside the bed and Gabriella beneath it, until Gabriella's sobs quieted to hiccups. "Gabriella," Elena said softly, "do you hide under here every night?" A small nod. "Does your papa know?" Gabriella shook her head. "The other nannies, do they know?" Another head shake. "I wait till they're sleeping. Then I hide. Mama said hide when it's scary. It's scary at night." Elena's heart shattered into pieces. This little girl had been hiding under her bed every single night for 2 years, reliving her mother's murder, and no one knew. The nannies who'd quit hadn't been failing because Gabriella was difficult. They'd been failing because they'd never discovered that their charge spent every night traumatized and alone in the dark beneath her bed. "Gabriella, would it be okay if I stayed with you? I could lie right here on the floor outside the bed. You don't have to come out if you don't want to. But you wouldn't be alone." Gabriella's eyes searched Elena's face in the darkness. "You'd stay. All night if you need me to. The other nannies didn't stay. The other nannies didn't know you needed them to stay. But I know now. And I'm not going anywhere." Gabriella was quiet for a long moment. Then, so quietly Elena almost missed it. "Okay." Elena grabbed a pillow from the chair and settled onto the carpet beside the bed. It was uncomfortable. The floor was hard, and her back would hate her in the morning. But Gabriella's breathing slowly evened out, and the trembling stopped, and eventually the little girl fell asleep in her hiding place. Elena stayed awake much longer, her mind racing. Dante had lied. His wife hadn't died of cancer. She'd been murdered, and Gabriella had witnessed it, had hidden under this very bed while her mother was killed by bad men in what had clearly been some kind of home invasion or targeted hit. And every night since, this traumatized child had been reliving that horror alone, while her father worked late and Nanny slept in the next room oblivious. Elena's chest ached with fury and heartbreak in equal measure. What kind of man let his daughter suffer like this? What kind of father was so absent that he didn't know his child couldn't sleep in her own bed? But even as the anger rose, Elena remembered Dante's expression when he'd spoken about Gabriella. The tightness around his eyes. The way his jaw had clenched when he'd mentioned the previous nanny's failing. He'd called her difficult, but what he'd meant was broken, and he hadn't known how to fix it. Around 3 a.m, Elena felt Gabriella's small hand reach out from under the bed, finger searching. Elena took the hand gently, holding it in the darkness. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm right here, sweetheart. You're safe." Gabriella's fingers tightened around hers, and they stayed like that, connected in the dark, until morning light began filtering through the curtains. When Gabriella finally emerged from under the bed, her hair tangled and her eyes puffy from crying, she looked at Elena with something that might have been hope. "You stayed," she whispered. "I told you I would." Elena sat up, her back screaming in protest. "And I'll stay every night if you need me to. But Gabriella, we need to tell your papa. He needs to know what's happening." Fear flashed across Gabriella's face. "He'll be mad." "He won't be mad at you, honey. I promise." But even as Elena made the promise, she wondered if it was true. Because she was about to confront Dante Caruso, a man dangerous enough that people called him the bad man, about the fact that his daughter had been traumatized by violence in his world. And men like Dante Caruso didn't appreciate being confronted. But as Elena looked at Gabriella's small, scared face, she knew she didn't have a choice. This child deserved better than hiding under her bed every night. She deserved to feel safe in her own home. She deserved a father who knew how badly she was hurting. And if Elena had to face down a Mafia boss to make that happen, then that's exactly what she'd do. After all, desperate people made the bravest decisions. And Elena Rossi had just discovered something worth being desperate about. Elena waited until 7 in the morning, when she heard movement in the main part of the penthouse. Gabriella had finally fallen into exhausted sleep around 5, still curled on the carpet beside Elena rather than in her bed. The little girl's hand remained clasped in Elena's, as if letting go meant drowning. Moving carefully to avoid waking her, Elena slipped free and tucked a blanket around Gabriella's small form. Then she stood, her back protesting every movement after hours on the hardwood floor, and walked toward the kitchen where she could hear the coffee maker running. Dante stood at the counter in dark slacks and a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, reviewing something on his phone. He looked up when she entered, his dark eyes taking in her rumpled sleep clothes and tangled hair with swift assessment. "You're up early," he said, his tone neutral. "Gabriella's still sleeping. We need to talk." Elena's voice came out steadier than she felt. "About your daughter. About what's really happening with her." Something flickered in his expression. "If this is about her not speaking to you yet, I told you she needs time. She spoke to me last night." Elena crossed her arms, partly for warmth in the air-conditioned space, partly for courage. "Around 11, when I found her hiding under her bed." Dante went very still, the kind of stillness that reminded Elena he was dangerous. "What do you mean, hiding under her bed?" "I mean she climbed out of her bed around 11, crawled underneath it, and spent the night there. Trembling, crying, reliving her mother's murder." The coffee mug in Dante's hand cracked. Not shattered, just a single fracture splitting down the side, coffee beginning to seep through. He set it down carefully, his movements controlled despite the tension radiating from every line of his body. "Her mother died of cancer." "No." Elena held his gaze. "Her mother was murdered. By men who came to your home when Gabriella was 4 years old. Her mother told her to hide under the bed. And Gabriella hid there while those men killed her mother in front of her. She says there was red on the floor when it finally got quiet, when her mama didn't come get her." Dante's face had gone completely blank. The kind of blank that meant emotion, so intense it had to be locked down, or it would destroy everything in its path. "She told you this?" She whispered it while lying under her bed at midnight. "Because apparently, Mr. Caruso, your daughter hasn't slept in her actual bed in 2 years. She spends every single night hiding under it, waiting for the bad men to come back. Reliving the worst moment of her life. Alone. Terrified. While you work late, and Nanny sleep in the next room with no idea what's happening." Elena's voice shook with fury she couldn't contain. "You hired 7 nannies in 2 years, and not one of them discovered this. Not one of them cared enough to check on her in the middle of the night. Not one of them noticed that your daughter is so traumatized she can't even sleep in her own bed. Enough!" The word came out like a blade. Dante's hands were flat on the counter, his knuckles white. "You don't know what you're talking about. Then tell me. Tell me what I don't know. Tell me why your 6-year-old daughter thinks hiding is the only way to survive." For a long moment, Dante said nothing. Then he moved, crossing to the windows that overlooked Central Park, his back to Elena. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled. "My wife's name was Sophia. She was an art teacher. She had no involvement in my business, no knowledge of what I did beyond the vague understanding that I worked in import-export. He paused. 2 years ago, a rival organization wanted to send me a message. They came to this apartment while I was in a meeting downtown. Sophia was home with Gabriella. It was supposed to be safe here. I had security, protocols, people who were supposed to prevent exactly this kind of thing. Elena heard the self-recrimination beneath his careful tone. Sophia called me when they breached the apartment. I heard her tell Gabriella to hide. I heard. He stopped, his shoulders rigid. I heard what happened next. I was 20 minutes away. By the time I arrived, Sophia was dead. The men were gone. And Gabriella was under her bed, silent, not responding when I called for her. When I finally got her to come out, she was covered in her mother's blood from crawling through it to reach her hiding spot. Elena's hand went to her mouth. Oh God. She didn't speak for 6 months. Complete selective mutism. When she finally started talking again, it was only to whisper. And she never mentioned that night. Not once. The therapist I hired said she blocked it out, that childhood amnesia had protected her from the full trauma, that she might never remember the details. He turned to face Elena, and his eyes held a grief so deep it made her chest ache. I thought she'd forgotten. I thought the nightmares were just generic fear responses. I didn't know she remembered everything. I didn't know she was hiding every night. His jaw clenched. I didn't know because I wasn't here. Because I was too busy hunting down the people responsible, expanding territory to make sure no one could threaten us again, building walls so high around my world that my daughter suffocated inside them. The raw honesty of it caught Elena off guard. She'd expected defensiveness, anger, denial. Not this brutal self-awareness. The nannies, Dante continued, his voice rough. They quit because I was impossible to work for. Because I was never satisfied, always finding fault, pushing them away before they could get close enough to see how badly I was failing her. Because if they didn't care enough to discover what was happening, then they deserved to be fired. But the truth is, I was the one who didn't care enough. I was the one who should have known. Elena moved closer, her anger shifting into something more complicated. You didn't fail her intentionally. You were drowning in your own grief, trying to protect her the only way you knew how. By not being here, Dante's laugh was bitter. By throwing money at the problem and hoping someone else could fix what I'd broken. By surviving the only way you could. Elena stopped a few feet from him. Trauma doesn't just affect children, Mr. Caruso. You lost your wife in the most violent way possible. You've been carrying that guilt and rage for 2 years. You can't parent effectively when you're barely surviving yourself. Don't make excuses for me. His eyes were hard. I'm her father. I should have known. Should have been there. Should have. He stopped, his control fracturing. She's been alone this whole time. Hiding. Afraid. And I didn't even notice. You're noticing now, Elena said quietly. That's what matters. Is it? Dante moved to the counter, bracing his hands against it like it was the only thing keeping him upright. What do I do with this information, Miss Rossi? How do I fix 2 years of her suffering alone? You start by being present. Really present, not just physically in the apartment, but emotionally available. You talk to her about what happened, not to force her to relive it, but to let her know that you know, that she doesn't have to hide her fear from you. Elena took a breath, knowing what she was about to suggest would be difficult. And you get her back into therapy. Real trauma therapy with someone who specializes in childhood PTSD. Someone who understands that she's not just grieving, she's terrified. I took her to 3 different therapists. None of them helped. Because they didn't know what they were treating. They thought she'd forgotten. But she hasn't forgotten, and she needs help processing what she remembers. There are specialists who work specifically with children who've witnessed violence. I can research options if you want. Dante studied her for a long moment. Why are you doing this? You've been here less than 24 hours. You could walk away, take your contract payout, and find a position that doesn't involve a traumatized child and a father who clearly has no idea what he's doing. Because I know what it's like to be responsible for someone who's suffering, Elena said simply. My brother is dying slowly. Every day I watch him get a little weaker, a little more dependent, a little closer to the end. And I can't fix it. I can't cure him or stop the disease or give him back the life he should have had. But I can be there. I can make sure he knows he's not alone in the suffering. That's what Gabriella needs, Someone who won't leave, who won't give up when it's hard, who'll sit on the floor beside her bed at 3 in the morning and hold her hand in the dark. Something shifted in Dante's expression. The hardness eased slightly, replaced by what might have been respect. You stayed with her. All night. Of course I did. She needed me to. The other nannies wouldn't have done that. The other nannies didn't know what she needed. I do now. And I'm not going anywhere. Dante was quiet for a moment. Then, I need to see her. She's sleeping. Finally. She didn't fall asleep until 5. I don't care. He was already moving toward Gabriella's room. I've missed 2 years. I'm not missing another minute. Elena followed him, her heart pounding. She didn't know how this would go. Didn't know if Gabriella would retreat further, or if this could be the beginning of real healing. They found Gabriella, exactly where Elena had left her, curled on the floor beside her bed, wrapped in the blanket Elena had tucked around her. Her dark hair spread across the carpet, her small face finally peaceful in sleep. Dante stood in the doorway, frozen. Elena watched him take in the scene, his daughter sleeping on the floor because the bed felt too dangerous, the tear stains on her cheeks, the way her hands were still curled as if holding on to someone. He moved slowly, carefully, lowering himself to sit on the floor beside Gabriella. He didn't touch her, just sat there, watching her sleep, his expression raw with grief and love and regret. I'm so sorry, Piccola, he whispered in Italian. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm so sorry I didn't know. Gabriella stirred, her eyes opening slowly. They focused on Dante, and for a moment fear flashed across her face, the instinctive fear of being caught doing something wrong. Papa! Her voice was small and certain. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Dante's hand hovered near her, not touching but offering. Miss Elena told me about the hiding, about how you sleep under the bed every night. Gabriella's eyes widened. She looked at Elena, betrayal clear in her expression. I know you're scared, Dante continued gently. I know you think the bad men might come back. But Gabriella, I need you to understand something. That night when Mama died, that was my fault. Not yours. Never yours. You did exactly what Mama told you to do. You were so brave, hiding there even though you were scared. You saved yourself by listening to her. Tears began sliding down Gabriella's cheeks. But she died, Papa. She died and I didn't help her. You couldn't have helped her, baby. You were 4 years old. There was nothing you could do except survive. And that's what Mama wanted. She wanted you to survive. But I'm still scared. Gabriella's voice broke. I'm scared every night. I'm scared they'll come back. I'm scared you'll die too and I'll be alone. I know. Dante's voice roughened. I know you're scared. And I'm so sorry I didn't know before. I'm sorry I wasn't here to help you feel safe. He held out his arms, an offering. Can I hold you, Piccola? Please. Gabriella stared at him for a heartbeat. Then she crawled out from beside the bed and into her father's arms, her small body shaking with sobs. Dante pulled her close, one hand cradling her head against his chest, the other wrapped around her back. I've got you, he murmured. I've got you, baby. You're safe. I promise you're safe. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. Elena backed toward the door, giving them privacy. But before she could leave, Dante's voice stopped her. Miss Rossi, stay. She paused. Gabriella, Dante said gently, pulling back enough to look at his daughter's tear-stained face. Miss Elena is going to help us. She's going to help you feel safe again. But I need you to talk to her, to tell her when you're scared, to let her help you. Can you do that? Gabriella looked at Elena, her hazel eyes swimming with tears and hope and fear. You won't leave. I won't leave, Elena promised. Not until you feel safe enough to sleep in your own bed. Not until you believe the bad men aren't coming back. However long that takes. The other nannies left. I'm not the other nannies. I make promises I keep. Gabriella studied her for a long moment. Then quietly, okay, it wasn't trust. Not yet, but it was the beginning of something. A crack in the wall Gabriella had built around herself, letting in just enough light to see that maybe, possibly, she didn't have to hide forever. The days that followed established new rhythms. Dante canceled his meetings for the rest of the week, something Mrs. Chin said had never happened in the 5 years she'd worked for him. He had breakfast with Gabriella every morning, took her to school himself, came home for dinner instead of working until midnight. And every night, when Gabriella's bedtime came, both Dante and Elena sat with her. They didn't force her to stay in the bed. Instead, they made a nest of blankets and pillows on the floor, a safe space that wasn't under the bed but wasn't in it either. A compromise. "Tell me about Mama," Gabriella asked on the third night, curled between them in the blanket nest. "Tell me something happy." Dante's jaw tightened, but he answered, "Your mama loved to paint. She'd get so focused on a canvas that she'd forget to eat. I'd have to bring her sandwiches in the studio and watch her eat them to make sure she actually did." "What did she paint?" "Everything. Landscapes, portraits, abstract things I never understood but pretended to." A small smile touched his lips. "She painted a portrait of you when you were 3. You were covered in her paint because you tried to help. She laughed so hard she cried, and then she painted you exactly like that, rainbow colors on your cheeks and your hair. She said you were her masterpiece." Gabriella's eyes filled with tears. "I don't remember that. I have the painting. It's in my office. I can show you tomorrow if you want." "Yes." Gabriella's hand found his. "I want to remember the good things, not just the scary things." "Then we'll remember together," Dante promised. Elena watched them, her heart aching with bittersweet emotion. This was healing, slow and painful but real. This was a father learning to be present, and a daughter learning that being vulnerable wasn't the same as being unsafe. On the 5th night, Gabriella asked Elena about her family. "Do you have a mom and papa?" "Not anymore," Elena said gently. "They died 3 years ago in a car accident. But I have a little brother named Marco. He's 12, and he's very sick. That's why I needed this job, to help pay for his medicine and the equipment that keeps him alive." Gabriella's eyes went wide. "Is he going to die?" "Probably. Someday." Elena forced herself to be honest. "His disease doesn't have a cure. But that doesn't mean I stop fighting for him. It doesn't mean I love him any less. It just means our time together is precious, so I make sure he knows how important he is every single day." "I wish I could meet him," Gabriella said softly. "Maybe you can. If your papa says it's okay, and if Marco's feeling strong enough, maybe you could visit him with me on one of my days off." Dante had been quiet through this exchange, but now he spoke. "We could arrange that. If it's important to Gabriella." "It is," Gabriella said firmly. "If Marco is important to Miss Elena, then he's important to me too." Something warm bloomed in Elena's chest. This little girl who'd been so broken, so unable to connect with anyone, was opening her heart, was learning that caring about people didn't always mean losing them. Progress. The breakthrough came on the 8th night. They'd established the routine, blanket nest on the floor, stories, gentle conversation about Sophia and memories and fears. Gabriella had moved from under the bed to beside it, but still hadn't attempted to actually sleep in it. Tonight, after Dante read 3 chapters of a book about a girl who could talk to animals, Gabriella looked at her bed. Really looked at it, like she was seeing it for the first time. "What if I tried?" she whispered. "What if I try to sleep up there instead of down here?" Dante's hand stilled on the book. "You don't have to try anything before you're ready, Piccola. But what if I want to try?" Gabriella's voice was small but determined. "What if I want to stop being scared?" Elena met Dante's eyes over Gabriella's head. She saw the same hope and fear she felt reflected there. "Then we try," Elena said gently. "And if it's too scary, you can come back down. No one will be disappointed. We'll just keep trying until it feels okay." Gabriella nodded slowly. Then, with careful movements, she climbed onto the bed. She settled against the pillows, pulling the covers up to her chin. Her hands gripped the blanket tightly, her whole body tense. "We're right here," Dante said, moving to sit on the edge of the bed. "We're not leaving. Promise." Gabriella's eyes were huge in the dim light. "Promise," Elena said from the other side. They sat like that for 20 minutes, Dante on one side and Elena on the other, both holding Gabriella's hands while she trembled and breathed and fought against 2 years of fear. "The bad men aren't coming," Gabriella whispered, like a mantra. "The bad men aren't coming." Papa's here. Miss Elena's here. I'm safe. I'm safe. I'm safe. Slowly, incrementally, her body relaxed. Her grip on their hands loosened. Her breathing evened out. And then, impossibly, she fell asleep. In her bed. Not under it. Not on the floor beside it. In the bed, like a normal 6-year-old child who wasn't haunted by violence and loss. Dante looked at Elena across the space where Gabriella slept, and she saw tears on his face. This dangerous man, this person whose business involved enough violence that rivals had murdered his wife in his own home, was crying with relief that his daughter had slept in her bed. "Thank you," he mouthed silently. Elena just nodded, her own throat too tight for words. They stayed there for another hour, making sure Gabriella didn't wake in panic. When she continued sleeping peacefully, they carefully extracted their hands and stood. In the hallway outside Gabriella's room, Dante sagged against the wall like someone who'd been carrying an impossible weight and had finally, briefly, set it down. "She did it," he said, his voice rough. "She actually did it." "She did," Elena agreed. "This is huge progress, Mr. Caruso. But you know tomorrow might be harder. This isn't linear. She might need to sleep on the floor again next week, or have setbacks. Healing doesn't happen in straight lines." "I know." He scrubbed a hand over his face. "But tonight, she slept in her bed. That's enough to hold on to." They stood in the dim hallway, exhaustion and relief, and something else Elena couldn't quite name charging the air between them. "I misjudged you," Dante said finally. "When you walked into my office 9 days ago, I saw someone desperate and inexperienced. Someone who'd take the money and run the moment things got difficult. And now I see someone who kept a promise to a traumatized child, even when it meant sleeping on the floor. Someone who confronted me about my failures as a parent, even though I could have fired you. Someone who..." He paused, searching for words. "Someone who cares about my daughter's well-being more than her own comfort or safety. That's rare. In my world, that's almost unheard of." Elena met his gaze. "I told you I make promises I keep. Gabriella deserves someone who won't abandon her when it's hard. Every child deserves that." "You're right." Dante's expression was serious. "Which is why I need to be honest with you about something. You asked what kind of business I run. You accepted that boundary, agreed not to ask questions. But if you're going to stay, if you're going to be this important to Gabriella's recovery, you need to know what world you're living in." Elena's pulse quickened. "Okay. I run the Caruso organization. We control territory from Boston to Philadelphia. Import operations, both legal and otherwise. Protection services. We have legitimate businesses, but we also have connections to things that would get you arrested for simply knowing about them." His eyes never left hers. "The men who killed Sophia were from a rival family trying to expand into our territory. I spent 18 months hunting them down. They're all dead now." The casual way he said it, "they're all dead now," should have terrified her. Maybe it should have sent her running. But Elena just nodded. "And the danger level, for Gabriella, for anyone living in this house, lower than it was 2 years ago. After what happened to Sophia, I restructured everything. Better security, harder boundaries between my family and my business, more aggressive responses to threats. No one wants another war with the Caruso family. But the risk is never zero. People in my world always have enemies. So Gabriella could be in danger again. Yes." He didn't sugarcoat it. "Though I'd die before I let anyone touch her again." Elena believed him. Whatever else Dante Caruso was, criminal, killer, dangerous man, he loved his daughter with fierce intensity. "I'm staying," she said firmly. "Not because the money is good, though it is. And not because I'm naive about the danger. I'm staying because Gabriella needs me. Because for the first time in 2 years, she's starting to heal. And I won't abandon her in the middle of that process. Even knowing what I am. What I do. I care about what you are as a father, not what you do for a living. And as a father, you're learning to show up for your daughter. You're learning to be present. That matters more than the rest of it." Dante studied her for a long moment. Then, quietly, "You're either very brave or very foolish, Miss Rossi. My grandmother would say both." Elena managed a tired smile. "She'd probably also tell me I'm in over my head. And she'd be right. But I'm here, and I'm not leaving. so we'll figure it out together. Together, Dante repeated, like he was testing the word. I haven't had a partner in parenting since Sophia died. I've barely had partners in anything since then. I don't know how to share responsibility, how to trust someone else to care about what I care about. You start by letting me do my job. You start by believing that I mean what I say when I promise I won't hurt her or abandon her. And you start by accepting that you don't have to do this alone anymore. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite warmth, but a softening, an acceptance. Then we do this together, he said. Help me help her heal. I will, Elena promised. But you need to help yourself heal too. You've been running from your grief for 2 years, building walls, working constantly to avoid feeling what happened. Gabriella can't be the only one who gets to recover. My grief isn't your concern. It is when it affects how you parent. It is when your daughter is learning from your example that emotions should be buried and vulnerability is weakness. Elena's voice was gentle but firm. You told Gabriella to talk to me when she's scared. Maybe you should talk to someone when you're drowning. Dante's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue, didn't dismiss her. He just nodded once, a sharp acknowledgement that maybe, possibly, she had a point. We should both sleep, he said finally. Tomorrow Gabriella might wake up proud of herself, or she might wake up terrified that she broke her safety rule. Either way, we need to be rested enough to handle it. Agreed. Elena turned toward her room, exhaustion pulling at every muscle. Miss Rossi. Dante's voice stopped her. Elena! She turned back. Thank you. For seeing what I couldn't. For staying when you could have left. For giving my daughter a chance at normal. Elena's throat tightened. She's worth it. You both are. She slipped into her room before he could respond, closing the door quietly behind her. Through the wall, she heard nothing from Gabriella's room. Just blessed silence. The silence of a child sleeping peacefully instead of hiding in terror. Progress. Real, genuine progress. Elena climbed into bed, her body aching but her heart full. She'd found what Gabriella was hiding from, not just under the bed, but in the depths of her trauma. A little girl who thought hiding was the only way to survive. But tonight, Gabriella had been brave enough to stop hiding, to try sleeping in the light instead of the dark. And tomorrow, they'd help her be brave again. However long it took. 3 weeks had passed since Gabriella first slept in her bed, and the transformation wasn't linear, just as Elena had warned. Some nights Gabriella made it through till morning in her bed, proud and beaming at breakfast. Other nights Elena would wake at 2 a.m. to find the little girl curled on the floor, trembling, whispering, "The bad men are coming," until Elena lay beside her and held her hand until dawn. But even the setbacks felt like progress, because now Gabriella would knock on the connecting door instead of suffering alone. Now she'd whisper, "I'm scared," instead of hiding in silence. Now she knew that being afraid didn't mean being abandoned. Elena stood at the stove on a Saturday morning, scrambling eggs while Gabriella sat at the kitchen island, coloring a picture of a rainbow. Marco was visiting today, his first visit to the penthouse, and Gabriella had been excited for 3 days straight, planning activities and asking Elena 1,000 questions about her brother. Will he like me? Gabriella asked for the 10th time, her crayon moving across the paper in careful strokes. He'll love you, Elena assured her, plating the eggs. Marco loves meeting new people. And he's really good at board games, so you two can play together. Even though he's sick? Even though he's sick. His mind works perfectly. It's just his muscles that don't cooperate. He uses a wheelchair and needs help with some things, but he's still just a 12-year-old boy who likes jokes and video games and making new friends. Dante entered the kitchen, dressed casually in jeans and a black sweater. He'd been doing that more often, dressing down on weekends, being present instead of locked in his office. He poured coffee and joined them at the island, reaching over to ruffle Gabriella's hair. Buongiorno, piccola. What are you drawing? A rainbow for Marco. Miss Elena says he likes bright colors because his room is kind of boring. His room is very boring, Elena confirmed, setting plates in front of both of them. Hospital equipment everywhere, white walls. He'd love something colorful to look at. Dante studied the drawing. That's beautiful, Gabriella. I'm sure he'll treasure it. Gabriella beamed, then returned to her careful coloring. Dante's eyes met Elena's over his daughter's head, and something warm passed between them. This had become familiar, these quiet domestic moments, the three of them existing together like a makeshift family. It shouldn't have worked. A mafia boss, a desperate nanny, and a traumatized child. But somehow it did. The doorbell rang at 10, and Gabriella jumped off her stool, racing toward the foyer with Elena following. Mrs. Patterson, their elderly neighbor, had agreed to bring Marco into the city. Elena opened the door to find her brother in his motorized wheelchair, grinning despite the oxygen cannula in his nose. "Lena!" His voice was thin but happy. "This place is huge. You didn't tell me you were living in a palace." "It's not a palace, it's just..." Elena trailed off, looking around at the marble and chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows. "Okay, it's kind of a palace." Marco's eyes found Gabriella, who had stopped a few feet away, suddenly shy. "Hi, you must be Gabriella. I'm Marco. Your nanny is my sister, which means we're basically related now." Gabriella's face lit up. "Really? Really? Sister-in-law or something. I don't know the official term, but it counts." Marco wheeled closer. "Is that a rainbow you're holding?" "I made it for you." Gabriella held out the drawing carefully. "Miss Elena said you'd like colors." "I love it. Can you help me hang it in my room when I get home? We could use tape, or those sticky things. Make it official." Gabriella nodded enthusiastically, her shyness evaporating. Within minutes, they were settled in the living room, Marco showing Gabriella how to play a video game on his tablet while Elena and Mrs. Patterson talked quietly in the kitchen. Dante had disappeared into his office, giving them space. But Elena noticed him checking in periodically, watching from the doorway as Gabriella laughed at something Marco said, as she gently adjusted his oxygen tube when it slipped, as she treated him like a regular kid instead of someone fragile. Around noon, they ordered pizza. Marco ate tiny bites, his appetite diminished by medication, but he kept up a steady stream of conversation. He told Gabriella about his online school, about the nurse who visited 3 times a week and always brought him terrible jokes, about the book series he was reading where kids could turn into animals. "That sounds amazing," Gabriella said, eyes wide. "Can you turn into any animal? Even a dragon?" "I don't think dragons are in this one. But there's a kid who can become a bird and fly away whenever things get scary. I think about that sometimes. What it would be like to just fly away from everything." Gabriella was quiet for a moment. "I used to hide when things got scary. Under my bed. Every night for a really long time." Marco nodded seriously. "Did it help?" "Sometimes. But it was lonely. And I was still scared even when I was hiding." She glanced at Elena. "Miss Elena helped me learn that I don't have to hide anymore. That it's okay to be scared, but I don't have to be alone when I'm scared." "Your sister is pretty great," Marco said to Elena. "She helped me too. When Mom and Dad died, I wanted to hide from everything. But Lena wouldn't let me. She made me keep living even when living was hard." Elena's throat tightened. "You made it easy to fight for you, buddy. You've always been brave." "Not always." Marco's voice was matter-of-fact. "Sometimes I'm really scared. About dying. About leaving Lena alone. About what happens after." He looked at Gabriella. "But being scared doesn't make you weak. It just makes you human." "That's what Miss Elena says too," Gabriella agreed. "She says Mama was scared the night the bad men came, but she was still brave because she protected me anyway." Marco reached over and squeezed Gabriella's hand with fingers that barely had strength left. "Your mama sounds like she was amazing." "She was." Gabriella's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled through them. "I'm trying to remember the good things about her instead of just the scary things. Papa helps. He tells me stories about when they first met, and how she used to paint, and how she sang really badly but didn't care." By mid-afternoon, Marco was fading. His eyes had taken on the exhausted look Elena recognized, his breathing more labored despite the oxygen. Mrs. Patterson stood to leave, and Gabriella hugged Marco carefully. "Can you come back?" she asked. "Please." "Definitely. If your dad says it's okay, and if Lena has another day off." Marco smiled. "Maybe next time we can watch a movie. I'll bring the one about the kid who talks to animals." After they left, Gabriella was quiet. She helped Elena clean up the living room, moving slowly, thoughtfully. "Miss Elena," she said finally, "Marco is really sick, isn't he? Like he might die soon. Elena's chest ached. She'd known this conversation was coming, but it still hurt. Yes, sweetheart. He's very sick. The doctors say he probably has a few years, but they're not sure. His disease doesn't have a cure. And you take care of him, even though you know he's going to die? Of course I do. Loving someone doesn't stop just because you might lose them. If anything, it makes the time you have together more precious. Elena sat on the couch, pulling Gabriella beside her. You understand that, don't you? You lost your mama, but you still love her. Death doesn't end love. Gabriella leaned against Elena's side. I'm glad Marco has you. I'm glad he's not alone when he's scared. I'm glad you have us now, too. Your papa and me. You're not alone anymore either. I know. Gabriella was quiet for a moment. Miss Elena, I want to sleep in my bed tonight, without you sitting beside me. I think I can do it by myself now. Elena's breath caught. Are you sure? I'm still scared sometimes. But Marco is scared too, and he's still brave. I want to be brave like him. Like Mama was. She looked up at Elena with those hazel eyes that had seen too much. Will you be sad if I don't need you to sit with me anymore? Oh, sweetheart. Elena pulled her into a tight hug. I'll be proud. So incredibly proud. That's what healing looks like, needing me a little less each day. Growing stronger. Feeling safe enough to be by yourself. But you'll still be next door? In case I get really scared. Always. I'm not going anywhere. That night, after dinner and bath time and 3 stories, Gabriella climbed into her bed. Dante sat on one side, Elena on the other, both prepared for the familiar ritual of waiting until she fell asleep. You can go, Gabriella said softly. I want to try sleeping by myself. Like a big girl. Dante's hand stilled on the blanket he'd been smoothing. You don't have to rush this, Piccola. I'm not rushing. I'm ready. She looked between them. You'll both be close if I need you, right? Right next door, Elena confirmed. And your papa is just down the hall. Then I'm ready. Dante leaned down and kissed her forehead. Ti amo, Gabriella. So much. You're the bravest person I know. Ti amo, Papa. Elena kissed her cheek. Sweet dreams, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. They left the door cracked open, the hallway light providing a soft glow. In the corridor outside, Dante stopped, his shoulders rigid with emotion. She's really doing it, he said quietly. She's really healing. She is. Elena smiled despite the tears threatening. You both are. They stood in the hallway, listening. No sounds of distress came from Gabriella's room. Just silence. The good kind. The kind that meant peace instead of fear. I started seeing someone, Dante said abruptly. A therapist. You were right. I can't help Gabriella process her trauma if I'm drowning in my own. So I'm talking about it. About Sophia. About the guilt. About how I've been running for 2 years. Elena turned to look at him. That's huge, Dante. Really huge. It's uncomfortable as hell, he admitted. Talking about feelings isn't exactly my strength. But Gabriella needs a father who's present, not one who's constantly escaping into work. So I'm trying. That's all anyone can do. Try. Dante's dark eyes found hers, and something in his expression shifted. I couldn't have done this without you. The past 3 weeks, watching her change, watching her smile again, hearing her laugh, that's because of you. Because you saw what everyone else missed. Because you kept your promise. We did this together, Elena corrected gently. You showed up. You stayed even when it was hard. You learned to be vulnerable with her. That's not nothing, Dante. That's everything. I want to give you something. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. Your first month's pay, plus a bonus. And before you argue, it's not charity. It's compensation for sleeping on floors, for confronting me when I needed to hear hard truths, for caring about my daughter like she's your own. Elena took the envelope, her hands trembling. She opened it and stared at the check inside. $20,000. Enough to pay off months of Marco's medical debt. Enough to keep them housed and fed and safe. This is too much, she whispered. It's not enough. It will never be enough for what you've given us. Dante's voice was rough. You gave me my daughter back, Elena. You helped her find her way out of the dark. That's priceless. Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay. Not just as her nanny, but as part of our family. However that looks. For as long as you're willing. Elena looked up at him, this dangerous man who'd learned to be gentle, who'd fought his own demons to be present for his child. I'll stay. For as long as you'll have me. Something passed between them in the dim hallway. An understanding. A connection that went deeper than employer and employee, beyond the professional boundaries they'd carefully maintained. Dante's hand came up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with surprising gentleness. You're remarkable, Elena Rossi. You walked into my life desperate and afraid, and somehow you ended up saving us both. You saved me too, she admitted. Gave me a way to keep my brother alive. Gave me purpose beyond just surviving. Showed me that family isn't just blood, it's showing up for people when they need you most. Elena, Dante started, but stopped as his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression hardened. I have to take this. Business. The moment broke. Dante stepped away, answering in rapid Italian, his tone shifting from vulnerable to commanding in seconds. Elena watched him transform back into the man who ran a criminal empire, the softness disappearing beneath necessary armor. She understood. His world required that hardness, required walls and violence and decisions most people couldn't live with. But with Gabriella, with her, those walls came down. He allowed himself to be human. That was enough. 2 months later, Elena stood in Gabriella's doorway watching the little girl sleep peacefully in her bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and drawings Marco had sent. Gabriella had slept through the night in her own bed for 3 weeks straight now. No hiding, no panic attacks, just normal childhood sleep. The nightmares still came occasionally, but when they did, Gabriella would knock on Elena's door, whisper, I had a bad dream, and Elena would hold her until the fear passed. Progress wasn't perfection. It was just forward movement, however slow. Dante appeared beside her, his presence familiar now. She's out completely. I read her 4 chapters, and she still wanted more. She loves story time with you. Elena smiled. I think it's her favorite part of the day. Mine too. Dante was quiet for a moment. The therapist says Gabriella's progress is exceptional. That most children who witness what she witnessed remain symptomatic for years. But she's integrating the trauma, learning to live with it rather than being controlled by it. She's strong, like her father. She's strong like her nanny. Dante's hand found Elena's, his fingers threading through hers, who showed her that being vulnerable isn't weakness, that asking for help is brave, that love doesn't leave just because things get hard. Over the past 2 months, this had become normal too, the casual touches, the way they gravitated toward each other, the unspoken understanding that something was growing between them. Something neither had named yet, but both recognized. I need to tell you something, Dante said, leading her away from Gabriella's door toward the living room. About my business. Elena's stomach tightened. Okay. I've been making changes, restructuring, moving away from the operations that are too dangerous, too likely to bring violence near Gabriella again. He sat on the couch, pulling Elena down beside him. It's slow, you can't just walk away from this world, but I'm transitioning toward legitimate businesses, import operations that don't involve anything illegal, security consulting, the things that won't get federal attention or put targets on our backs. Why? Elena asked, though she thought she knew. Because I want Gabriella to grow up without fear. I want her to invite friends over without me worrying about security risks. I want her to have a normal life. He paused. And because I want you to stay without constantly wondering if the police are going to raid the apartment or if rivals are going to try something. I told you I'm not leaving. I know. But I also know what I'm asking you to accept by being here. And I'm trying to make it easier, safer, more sustainable long-term. Elena studied his face, the sharp angles, the dark eyes that had learned to soften around her and Gabriella, the jaw that clenched when he talked about protecting them. You're doing this for us. I'm doing it because I've spent 2 years being half alive, running from grief, building walls so high I couldn't see over them. And then you knocked on my office door, desperate and honest and determined to save your brother, and somehow you ended up saving me too. His hand cupped her face. I'm doing this because I want a future, Elena. A real one. With my daughter healthy and happy. With you here as part of our family. However that evolves. Dante, I'm not declaring anything, he interrupted gently. I'm not putting pressure on us. I know it's complicated. I know I come with baggage most people couldn't handle. But I need you to know that what I feel for you isn't gratitude or convenience. It's real. And if you ever want to explore what this could be beyond nanny and employer, beyond friends raising a child together, I'm here. Willing. Hoping. Elena's heart pounded. She'd been carefully not examining her feelings for Dante, not naming the warmth that flooded through her when he smiled at his daughter, the way her pulse quickened when their hands touched, the rightness of existing in this makeshift family they created. I feel it too, she whispered. Whatever this is, I feel it. But I'm scared, Dante. Scared of what it means. Scared of how much I've come to care about both of you. Scared that I'm confusing gratitude with something else. Then we take it slow. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. We don't rush. We just keep existing together, keep building this family, keep being honest about what we feel and what we fear. And if it grows into something more, we'll figure it out together. Together, Elena repeated. I like that word. So do I. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. But Elena didn't want distance. She wanted this, wanted him, wanted the life they were building, wanted to believe that maybe, possibly, love could grow from crisis and desperation into something solid and real. Their lips met softly, not desperate or passionate, but gentle. A promise, a beginning, an acknowledgement of something that had been building for months, finally given permission to exist. When they pulled apart, both breathing harder, Dante rested his forehead against hers. We'll figure this out. We will, Elena agreed. One day at a time, one challenge at a time. Together. A small sound made them both turn. Gabriella stood in the hallway, rubbing her eyes. I had a dream about Mama, but it wasn't scary. She was painting and singing bad and smiling. It was nice. Elena's throat tightened. That sounds like a beautiful dream, sweetheart. It was. Gabriella padded over to the couch, climbing up between them without hesitation. Can I stay here with you guys for a little bit? I'm not scared. I just don't want to be alone right now. Of course. Dante pulled a blanket from the back of the couch, spreading it over all three of them. We're right here, Piccola. Always. Gabriella settled against Elena's side, her small hand finding Dante's. Miss Elena, are you going to stay forever? Not just for a job, but for real? Like family? Elena met Dante's eyes over Gabriella's head. She saw her own hope reflected there, her own fear, her own determination to make this work despite the odds. Yes, she said firmly. For real. Like family. Good. Gabriella yawned. Because you're my favorite. Both of you. Together. They sat like that as Gabriella drifted back to sleep. A father learning to be present. A nanny who becomes so much more. And a little girl who'd finally stopped hiding under her bed. The journey had been painful. The healing wasn't complete. There would be setbacks and struggles and moments when fear threatened to overwhelm them all again. But they had each other. They had honesty and commitment and love that had grown from the darkest circumstances into something worth fighting for. Elena had walked into Dante Caruso's life desperate to save her brother. Instead, she discovered a child who needed saving even more. A little girl hiding under her bed every night, reliving trauma no child should have to carry. What Elena had found there had broken her heart. But what came after, the healing, the trust, the slow rebuilding of a family from broken pieces, had mended it again. And as she sat wrapped in blankets with Dante and Gabriella, listening to the child's peaceful breathing and feeling the warmth of Dante's hand in hers, Elena knew she'd made the right choice. She'd found her family, not the one she was born into, but the one she'd chosen, the one that had chosen her back. And sometimes, that was the best kind of family there was. Epilogue 6 months later, Elena stood in the doorway of a new bedroom, not at the penthouse, but in a brownstone Dante had purchased in Brooklyn. A home with a backyard and bedrooms enough for everyone, including one specifically designed for Marco with all the medical equipment he needed. Her brother lived with them now. Mrs. Patterson visited weekly, but Marco had become part of their strange, beautiful family. He and Gabriella were inseparable, brother and sister in every way that mattered. Tonight they were having a movie night, all 4 of them piled on the huge sectional Dante had bought specifically for this purpose. Gabriella sat between Marco and Elena, sharing popcorn and whispering commentary. Dante's arm stretched along the back of the couch behind Elena, his hand occasionally playing with her hair. This was home. Not the penthouse with its marble and chandeliers. Not the desperate studio apartment in Astoria. This brownstone filled with laughter and love and the mess of actually living. Gabriella no longer slept under her bed. She had nightmares occasionally, but she'd learned to talk about them, to process them, to understand that fear was normal but didn't have to control her life. Marco was still dying, slowly, inevitably. But he was dying surrounded by people who loved him, in a house that felt safe, with a little sister who read to him when he was too tired to hold books himself. And Elena and Dante had stopped pretending their feelings were complicated or impossible. They'd simply accepted that love could grow from crisis, that family could be built from desperation, that sometimes the best things in life came from the darkest moments. "Miss Elena!" Gabriella whispered, even though Elena had told her 100 times she could just use Elena now. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm happy. Really, really happy. Is that okay? Even though Mama's gone and Marco is sick? Is it okay to be happy?" Elena pulled her closer. "It's more than okay. It's exactly what your mama would want. It's what Marco wants too. Being happy doesn't mean forgetting the sad things. It just means choosing to live fully despite them." "Okay." Gabriella snuggled back against her. "Then I choose happy." "Me too," Marco said softly. "Me 3, Dante added, his hand squeezing Elena's shoulder. "Me 4, Elena finished, her heart so full it ached. This was what healing looked like. Not perfection. Not the absence of pain or fear or loss. Just forward movement. Just love strong enough to carry them through the dark nights. Just a family built from broken pieces, finding wholeness together." And as the movie played and Gabriella laughed and Marco smiled and Dante held her close, Elena knew with absolute certainty she'd found what she was looking for the night she discovered Gabriella hiding under her bed. Not just a child who needed saving, but a home worth building, a family worth fighting for, a love worth every risk she'd taken to find it. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love the story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.